Hey everybody, this episode of Finding Freedom on the Lions of Liberty podcast is brought to you by the Paws to the Wall podcast. Paws to the Wall is hosted by two libertarian brothers and longtime supporters and listeners of this show, Mike and Nick Paul. Each episode, they interview experts on a whole variety of different topics. Some of their past guests include Scott Horton, Gene Epstein, Pete Quinones, Jason Stapleton, Matt Erickson, and of course, some of the Lions of Liberty, myself and fellow host here of Electric Liberty Land, Brian McWilliams, have both been on the podcast. We had an awesome time. Of course, outside of the political discussion that they do on the show, they also interview experts on a lot of other interesting topics, such as history, cars, jiu-jitsu, music, barbecue, and so much more, guys. You definitely want to check out this podcast. Paws to the Wall can be found on all major podcast platforms. Check it out today. Again, that is Paws to the Wall, P-A-U-L-S to the Wall.
We are born free, and we will die free. The time in between, though, that's complicated. In that time, governments, institutions, and our egos will limit our ability to find true freedom in this life. These are real stories of real people overcoming the odds, persevering in justice, and unlocking their potential. Welcome to Finding Freedom. Here's your host, John Odermatt.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Finding Freedom here on the Lions of Liberty podcast. And ladies and gentlemen, if this is your first time hearing this podcast, congratulations and welcome. If it's your second, third, or 100th time, well, thank you for coming back. I appreciate it. And if you haven't yet, please go to wherever you're listening to this and subscribe to the podcast, because that helps us and it helps you. It just delivers it to your phone, so you don't have to do any work. You just get it delivered, either today's show on Thursday, Finding Freedom, or Wednesday's show, Electric Liberty Land with Brian McWilliams, or Monday's show with Mark Claire, our flagship program. So any three of those shows, you get delivered to your phone by the magic of the internet. It's amazing. Got a great show lined up for you guys today. Going to be talking about a very just impactful and important documentary film that talks about a crazy case where we'll get into the details, but it involves two Navy SEALs being implicated in the murder of a young woman. And amazing documentary that's on Amazon Prime. We'll talk about it when I introduce my guest, but I'm really excited to dive into that. But before we get to that, I want to remind you guys to check out the Burnin' Daylight podcast. Listener of this show, supporter of this show, Matt McKinley, great guy, host of the Burnin' Daylight podcast. It's a very, very entertaining program. And Matt, believe it or not, the guy is a cowboy. So what is it? It's a cowboy-based podcast. He's bringing on guys to talk about cowboy shit and a little bit of cowboy humor, a little bit of profanity, stuff like that. Hide the kids, hide the wife maybe. It's good stuff. You can find the Burning Daylight podcast anywhere podcasts are found, and download it, put it in your queue, guys. I promise you will not regret it. All right, let's get rolling into today's show. All right, welcome back to another episode of Finding Freedom here on Lions of Liberty. And I am joined by film director, former member of the Armed Services, did time in the Navy, JD Leete. And we're going to talk about just an incredible documentary that he put out. I guess it came out several years ago. I just watched it actually last night with my wife, and we were just talking before the show. I was talking with JD, just talking about how it's so impactful that I find myself just thinking about it throughout the day today. So JD, welcome to Finding Freedom.
Right on. Thanks for having me.
And JD, obviously the reason I had you on is to talk about this documentary, and I'll just give a very, very brief intro sort of teaser what it is, because we're going to talk about it more in depth, and I want to get, obviously your opinions on it and you to go in depth on it. But just so the audience knows, It's called Target of Opportunity. You can watch it on Amazon Prime. And what it is, it's from a case back in 1995, I believe, that two Navy SEALs were convicted of murdering a young woman, murdering and raping her and disposing of the body. And the documentary just takes you through the trial itself, takes you through later appeals, has just incredible interviews with family members and friends and people who are close to the situation, and really reveals that it wasn't at all actually what happened was not at all what the narrative the media was putting out, or what actually the court decision which convicted these two young men. So we'll get into talking about that. But JD, so you served in the Navy, correct? And
yeah, 22 years.
Give us some background on yourself.
I joined in 1982. And I did 4 years on a ship, the USS Yorktown. Great time. We were out of Norfolk, did med cruises. But at the time, I didn't love it. But looking back on it, the great friends traveling around and going to ports in Spain and the Mediterranean. And it was a great time. But then I got the opportunity to go work for the SEAL teams as a communicator, as a single channel satellite operator, where I would deploy with the SEALs and set up communications with a little small satellite dish, and could talk back to Virginia Beach from anywhere in the world, and then relay to the SEALs who were forward at the target whatever directions were being sent back, because they couldn't set up they couldn't travel with a satellite dish on their shoulder like a parrot. They would get small groups of guys that, they trained us to jump out of planes and to do a lot of great stuff. It was an amazing job. And then from there, I didn't even know about this job, but it's called SWCC, which is Special Warfare Combat Crewman. And, if you Google SEAL SWCC, that's the .com. That's now it's a closed looped, very kind of well-known job, but back then nobody knew about it. You're just on the boats delivering SEALs to and from the target, so you're more of an operator than as a you are an operator, just a different job than the SEALs. But I did that for a few years, beat me up pretty good out there on the ocean. I'm kind of a bigger guy, and it slammed me around quite a bit. But you're basically on a cigarette boat going 50 knots in heavy seas. It's, throwing boats out of planes and jumping after them. And it was an amazing, great job. But I was getting ready to retire. I'd gone down and worked in Panama with the Special Operations Command South down there, and closed that down in 99 when we had to leave Panama, and was teaching a class, working at a schoolhouse when 9/11 happened. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at my retirement, but I volunteered to go back to the communications at the SEAL team, and was the ops chief at the SEAL team everybody knows, but I still don't talk about. But we deployed over, and I was in Afghanistan for a while. Then I came back and retired. But that whole last bit, when I was getting ready to retire, I was getting ready to make documentaries. I knew that's what I wanted to do. I was going to classes. That's why I'd taken that shore duty job until 9/11 happened. So I really wanted to go get bin Laden. I believed all of that stuff then. I'm not so sure anymore. But I was a patriot, probably what you might call a neocon. But I'd started, we'll get into it. I was involved in the war on drugs in Colombia in the early 90s. And some of my libertarian feelings started taking over then. I started questioning what we were doing in the war on drugs in Colombia, and, spent time at embassies and things, and really started to wonder what's really going on here. So I had an anarchist streak the last 10 years of being in the Navy. And then when I got out, I started working on this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And now, instead of just foreign affairs and the war machine, I was looking at the justice system and the penal system and our jail. I spent a lot of time in prisons and courtrooms, and I urge everybody to go do that, and you will come back a Rothbardian anarchist.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this documentary does a great job of just showing the faults. Just you can plainly see the faults with our justice system. That it's, people say, or I often say it's broken, and yes, it's broken because so often, most of the time, they're not looking for truth. There's different incentives, different motivations, and those are often would lead to the different decisions. But I wanted to to start talking about.
Let me just enter a feature, not a bug.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Like, it's not working for us, but it's working fine for them.
Exactly. So this documentary, Target of Opportunity, and the two Navy SEALs who are the two guys who were convicted of this murder in the documentary, Dustin Turner and Billy Joe Brown, and they were convicted of murdering Jennifer Lee Evans. When's the first time you heard of this? How did you get interested in this?
Yeah, it's crazy. I was attached to a SEAL team in 1995. It's before I went to Panama. And when this happened, I was in Virginia Beach, and this happened. It was like a bomb went off in the community. Everybody was so angry. And so, it was in the paper every day. And, two SEALs, I was a SWIC by this time. So I'm working with SEALs every day out on the boats, training. Mm-hmm. And they were so angry, and I understood it, but being a little bit of an outsider and also just kind of a contrarian by nature, it just didn't make sense to me that two SEALs with that kind of training would do something this stupid that you had no chance of getting away with. That as soon as I read it, everything they did was so unsealed, like blaming each other. That's abducting a girl for sex is so, cowardly. It's a cowardly act. And I just, as cocky and obnoxious as these guys can be, there's no cowards. There's nobody that I could imagine one guy abducting a girl for sex, but let alone two, like one guy saying to the other, hey, I got this idea. And then if they did do it, how would they do it? Anybody that understands how we do things knows that you wouldn't go to a bar where people know you. You wouldn't show her friends your ID. You wouldn't, all of those things, as I was reading it as it came out, didn't make sense to me. But I was active duty in the Navy. I didn't dig in the way I did once I started making the movie. And once I started being lied to by police and prosecutors and catching them in lies, that that was the biggest mistake they could make if they'd just been square with me but they weren't. And that made me wonder why are they lying about it? The same thing that caught Turner and Brown lying about being drunk. Brown lied about drinking is what got him. That's what made the police know that he's lying when they were lying to me about, the interrogation tapes not existing and not being allowed to go talk to Brown and all these things that they told me that ended up not being true. I dug in harder, and it was a lot of work, but it was kind of fun.
Yeah. So was this the first documentary that you made? Wow.
Yes.
Jumped in.
Yeah, got in. Yeah. I not only took on the Navy SEALs, but the Virginia legal system. Mm-hmm. Yeah, good first. If you only want to make one movie, that's probably the way to go. Take on those.
So when you started, did you have I mean, did you have an idea of what the outcome would be that you, well, I
No,
guess, so I'm trying to put the timeline together because there is one point, what is it, in 2008? Is that when they had,
right.
okay.
And
So you
I
started
actually
prior
helped.
to 2008?
Right. I had been working on it, and Brown. I always worry about exposing too much in these things, because the movie does try to give you information,
Right. Yeah.
and uh, but Brown had written his. I didn't know any of this when I started, but Brown had written his lawyer in 1999, telling him that he had lied in trial and all of these things, and nobody knew about this, and his lawyer hadn't done anything, and uh, um, what's crazy is that a lot of things that I didn't know even when I made the movie. A woman named Lisa Spies watched my film, became so upset, she quit her job, started a nonprofit, and
Wow.
she has talked to Billy Brown uh, extensively, and we know so much more about this than we even knew in the when I made the film. But what you're asking about, how much did I know? Brown hadn't come forward until I think 2004. He did a written affidavit. That of course changed everything. Then in 2008, I had a cut. I was living in LA, had a cut that was pretty good, but it didn't have Brown on the stand. And then Turner gets his day in court in 2008, and I pick up and move to Virginia
Mm-hmm.
and recorded the Virginia Beach trial, then the appellate court, then the Supreme Court, and they let me in. They let me into the prisons. They don't let people into the prisons in Virginia anymore. I think I have something to do with that. Um, yeah, you can't get into a level 3 prison anymore with a camera.
Yeah, because you had extensive interviews with Turner, or those
Yeah,
were from the prison, obviously,
right,
right?
exactly. Brown was in a level 5, so I couldn't do it anyway. But he wasn't. Getting him in court was how I got him on camera,
Mm-hmm.
because he wasn't granting interviews. But it's like he says on the stand: how would you like to not only be the guy that murdered some innocent girl, but then blamed your best friend and let him take the rap for it? Um,
Right.
it's He didn't want to deal with that. It took him years to finally come clean.
One thing that was really cool and sort of surprising, but it seemed like you had a good amount of footage of Brown and Turner going through their SEALs training. So how
Well, this
did
is how you know when you're thinking about writing a book, or because there's just so much to this story that a book
Mhm.
you could really do something with. And really, that should have been an episodic. When I started working on it, there weren't really episodic Netflix, but there's so much to this. But so I was looking for, and a great catch on that, and it's a fairly interesting story and kind of unbelievable that that uh, uh, some being had his hand on my shoulder leading me,
Mhm.
uh, because I was looking for news footage in Virginia Beach from the time that I could license, pay for, and use, uh, uh, which eventually I found, but they didn't do it. There's a service there that a woman named Susan Maddox has, a service that will find footage for you. She couldn't do it. It was so old that they couldn't find it. And this is about 2007. And she says, but I was a producer for the news channel that we shot a, a bunch of footage of a BUDS class. And BUDS is basically underwater demolition SEALs. It's the training they go through. It's out in Coronado Island. And I was like, that's very rare. They don't let cameras into that training very often. That's very unusual. And she goes, yeah, we did a little bit, did a little episode for the news on it. And I have the footage in my garage with this other footage. So I said, well, send it to me. I was in LA. And, months go by. I call her. She goes, oh, I haven't even looked for it. I'm not, it's in my garage. I said, look, I'll come out there. I went out and did a pickup interview. with some people in Virginia Beach, and I went to her house and went to her garage, and there were, I don't know, 70 boxes of tapes, of BBC Pro tapes. So she goes, it's in there. It's labeled seals. So I just start digging through boxes, and I come across these boxes made seals and open it up, and there's 33 tapes, but I don't have a tape deck that'll play these, so I have to take them back to LA. She licensed them to me, but she has no idea. But she had shot it in 1995 or 1994, so I knew I had a good chance that it could be their class. That there would have been 3 classes that it could have been. I mean, that she could have shot. And so I plugged that first tape in, and they go across the helmets as they're sitting watching a graduation, and it says 194 on their helmets. And I just about lost it. I was like, but then even then, they may not be on camera. Then I start rolling through these films, and they're rock stars. They're on so much of it because they're getting yelled at all the time. They're big guys, and that happens a lot to big guys. Because they're a little slower, it's harder to do pull-ups and get up the O course and things like that. And Brown, especially, if you look at that footage, he was a beast. He was a big 6'3", he put on weight in buds. Nobody does that, but he was doing steroids like, no tomorrow. And
drinking and doing steroids, right?
Yeah, perfect. Let's train him to kill. Perfect guy. Yeah. Horrible alcoholic with doing 3 times the steroids. If anybody did them, he was doing 3 times the dosage and not cycling off. So by the time that poor girl, which let us never forget that Jennifer Evans is the victim. That her family didn't participate, and I understand, and I left them alone, because that is the true victim. But then when you got Brown telling you how it happened, and you look at all the evidence, you've got it. We deserve a better system. This is not what I fought for.
Yeah, not to give too much away, but I think everybody should watch this. But I think when people do watch it, you'll be slapped in the face and see, like I said at the top of the show, really, how disjointed our system is, where the prosecution is able to, I forget who it was that said it was like a performance art, maybe like who can perform better. And they said the prosecution performed better. And they did this ridiculous thing where they brought, because a car was used in the murder. So they brought in car seats, like that's supposed to somehow actually, be a, comparable, comparable scene to an actual car when you don't have any of the car around you, just the seats.
Yeah. And 2 guys, 6'3", 200 plus in a little tiny Geostorm, and they've got them moving around because there's no shell of the car on them. They have them moving, and it's the prosecutor, his secretary, and a deputy, playing the 3 parts. But it's so, whereas the car was right out they could have easily taken, but the defense did a horrible job in Turner's case of they didn't get any of their stuff in, and it didn't seem like they were even trying. But you got to remember, the community wanted both these guys hung. They want I don't mean the SEAL community, but in a sense they did too. But the community, this was it's a tourist town. You got military there that step on people's toes. It can be, it's kind of symbiotic, but this case really hurt tourism, really hurt the Navy's reputation. So there wasn't a lot of sympathy for a guy that drove away from a murder. And again, it gets, so, we could just talk about it completely, but I really, you kind of know the story now, but until you watch the film and see how brilliant I am at putting it together, that,
no, I mean, I'm not just blowing smoke here. It is brilliantly put together. I mean, I said that in our pre-show chat, just talking about, and my wife, after we finished watching last night, she's sitting there and she's like, "So he's still in prison?" Yeah, he's gonna die in prison. So yeah, it's one of those things that'll, not that it's gonna haunt you in a bad way, but it'll stick with you.
Definitely. And it's why, a lot of people go, how could Lisa Spies, she owns a software company. She still has ownership in that, but she's basically dedicated her life to finding wrongful convictions and trying to help, and works with the Innocence Project, and has gotten people out of prison, done great things. And it started from watching that film and being so upset, so shaken, and seeing Turner and knowing, like, is this guy for real? But when you take a SEAL that's not like Billy Brown, not somebody that should never have been involved, never been allowed into the SEALs with all the violence he had in his history, and then you take a kid like Turner.
Well, is that sorry to cut you off there, but is that really true? I mean, wouldn't the SEALs almost be looking for that? Well, maybe not to that extent, but
that's a good question. Yeah, I never used to think that way, but I definitely think that there's. I used to always. I worked for a great Master Chief SEAL, and he used to tell me, "Look, it's 10% of us make the 90% act right. They're crazy. So it's up to us to keep them in check." But I don't. Yeah, not drinking yourself to passing out and doing. The guy was suicidal. The guy had stood on a ledge of a building in Puerto Rico and almost jumped off. Again, things that I've found out since. I would have people call me the first year or two it was out and say, "Man, I was the manager at Pizza Hut where Billy Brown. I fired him, and he stalked me for 2 weeks and then beat the crap out of me." And wow. But yeah, that might be who. I mean, we need people to go first through the door, right? We need people to run into the building when they're bad guys there, and Billy would definitely do that. But you're taking your chances with somebody that knows how to do what he can do and drinks himself to passing out drunk and does 3 times the recommended dosage of steroids.
Yeah. So you're not looking for a psychopath, really, which is what Billy Brown is. Yeah. But you're looking for someone who's maybe just on the brink of that almost, but able to contain it.
Yeah, exactly. Can keep it in check and not, but it's ready to go when it's time to go. But he's just got to have a good filter on when it's time to go. And not all of them do. And I think that they're way better at it now. I mean, this thing brought a lot of attention on them. That the Navy the Evans family sued the Navy about the training and said that, this training took 2 normal kids and turned them into psychopaths. And basically the guy that did the investigation, John Floyd, said, no, this training, he went through every bit of the modules of Bud's training and said, no, we let a psychopath in. We didn't turn anybody into a psychopath. Now, I think Brown is better than he was. I think that a lot of this religion that he's found is, at first I saw it as so narcissistic, the way that he would say, because it's about himself. It's a deal that he's made with God to save himself, which is narcissism, which is one of the traits in the Robert Hare psychopath test, right? He's extremely narcissistic, but over time, I think he's a better person than he was then, but that's not saying much.
Yeah. I'm curious to get, so you talked a little bit about running into some issues with, getting, I guess, interviews with prosecutors and things of that nature. And I guess the actual interrogations, they tried to block those tapes from you. Can you talk about some of that stuff?
Yeah, sure. One of the things I wish I had done was run that last thing of, as credits were rolling, of all the people that turned me down for interviews, because it tells you a lot, because no police, none of the investigators, none of the prosecutor at the time, Bob Humphreys, none of those people would participate. And the way I got there's 1 hour of interrogation that got entered into Brown's trial, where Brown is being interrogated by this police officer, Al Byram. And, his story he's switched his story a few times already, and Al Byram's got him like the police officer I have in the film that evaluates that, says, he's got him right where he wants him. Like, get him to, you've caught him in a lie. Now go in for the kill. And he never does, because it would have ruined the case against Turner. But I had, that had been an exhibit in his case. So I got that from the court. They just, I'd written and asked for it, and I left California and went to Virginia and went to the court and asked for it, and they gave it to me. Then I got back to California, and there was a letter saying, "Oh no, we can't give it to you because of this and this and this." That was from the prosecutor's office. But I'd gone to Judge Shockwell Bonley, the judge in Brown's case, Brown's trial, and she'd just given it to me. So whatever they were saying about all that was the prosecutor lying to me. That they just turned it over to me. And we don't have to have a hearing, and we don't have to have the Evans family there, and all these things he said we had to do for me to get this tape. But then I'm watching all this news footage that I have, and they guaranteed me that was the only tape from this interrogation, and it flies by Byram screaming at Brown, which isn't in the tape that I have. He's screaming at him, I know you're lying. And it's got a time code that's like 4 hours later than the last frame of the tape that I have. So they've got hours and hours of this tape that they're pretending doesn't exist. They ignore Freedom of Information requests. And that isn't that unusual in this world. You'll find out in these kind of documentaries, they just ignore. They want you to spend a bunch of money on lawyers and then eventually not give it to you anyway. So, I know that there's more tapes, and I'm curious why they don't want them out. Because that was the day after Brown was arrested, and he's still trying to figure out what his story is. Mm-hmm. And even in the hour that I have, it's clear that he's lying, that neither of his stories match the car's evidence. The car, he's saying in both stories that she's in the back seat. And in one, he holds her down and Turner kills her. And the other one, Turner kills her alone before he even gets to the car. But there's no evidence of her in the back seat, and the seats don't configure the way that he said they do, where he's reclined back. They don't go that way. And I know that that's going to be exposed in those tapes if they would let me see them.
Yeah, I mean, what they're hiding is probably just even more so blatant evidence that, they only did this just to keep them both on the hook. They didn't want to let,
right.
You don't want to let someone who's actually innocent get away.
Right.
Not totally innocent. I think Turner obviously did, not to get too much into the details of it, but, did have, what was at fault in some way, but.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would argue that some of it is training taking over, but some of it is he didn't want to lose being a SEAL. Some of it is maybe fear of Brown. It's hard to say, but and some people just don't believe Brown now or Turner ever, and they're free to, that's fine. Just I just want everybody to know the facts. And then if they want to say, oh, the heck with him, he was involved in some way. That's, not much I can do about that. But as far as destroying evidence, what it always makes me think of is, you don't destroy 33,000 emails for no reason, right? Hillary Clinton
Mm-hmm.
and the right. There's a reason why you would do something like that.
Just wipe the server, just wiping it like with a cloth. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, there's not. I feel the same way about these tapes. They're not giving them to me for a reason, because it's going to say something.
Yeah, I mean the prosecution, obviously that's an easy bad guy to point to here, in this case, but also Turner's lawyer. I mean, I don't know if he was just sort of getting towards the end of his career and didn't care, but I mean it was a joke of a defense, really.
Yeah, it was incredible, and I was just reading the closing arguments, getting ready for this interview, and it's incredible. I mean, that's when you got all the stuff that's been presented, and you're making your argument and he was a buffoon. He was confused, didn't understand his own case. It was all that Turner was just too good looking to do something like this. So look at him. He doesn't have to abduct anybody. And even though that, tell Ted Bundy that, it doesn't work. To say, oh, Billy Brown looks like a killer, Dusty doesn't look like a killer. Well, there were some girls that thought Brown was more attractive. It's always funny when I watch with a group with women. They're like, man, those were really handsome young men, like really handsome young men, and it's true. They were young SEALs.
Yeah, I mean it's not surprising why this captured the media. You have these two young attractive men, Navy SEALs. This media narrative immediately goes into this thing about them being out trolling for threesomes and all this stuff. Just it's not surprising.
Group sex, tag team. Yeah, the reading the media at the time, it's just they immediately go to all this, and the prosecutor, incredible. It's like the idea that she could be out there in the car with Turner alone, not having sex, just seemed outrageous to that. Like, no, that happens. that happens where people meet at a bar and go out to a car and don't just immediately start having sex. It's like
crazy.
But it was a lot of transference in some of this stuff.
Yeah, so I don't want to go too much more into the detail of the doc, because I do want everyone to watch it, and of course I'll link to it on the show notes page, or everyone has Amazon Prime, because everyone gets packages delivered to their house in 2 days or less. So just go on your Prime app and just type in Target of Opportunity. It'll pop right up, and you can watch it.
Or Seal Murder. That's a good one. That, like, if you just type in Seal Murder, it'll pop right up. But yeah, it's. Yeah, that's what I recommend. Amazon Prime. It's easy for everybody to get to.
Or can people buy it? I mean, how else could people? If someone's anti-Amazon, how else can someone access it?
On iTunes, you can buy it. I don't do DVDs. I made that business call of whether it was worth it to do that. So. Most laptops don't even come with DVDs in them anymore. So the streaming is the way to go. And I like Amazon Prime. It's the best for me.
So will it be on there? Is it on there for like a limited amount of time now, or is it?
No, I think at any point they could take it down, but as long as it keeps doing well, they won't. We don't have a drop dead date on it. But I'll figure out other things to do at that point. But it got to number 8 on iTunes back in 2017. But I figure there's about 30,000 people have seen it. That leaves 300 million in America. So, shows like yours, it's a libertarian film. It doesn't, I mean, I'm not pushing that, but
Mm-hmm.
do you feel that way after watching it?
It definitely, I mean, definitely is libertarian undertones. Well, even more so than, I mean, it's, yeah, it really shows, it's a real life example of how broken the criminal justice system is for the people it's supposed to be serving, but it serves, the judges and the prosecutors and even the defense attorneys, who some of them go
Yes.
on to get positions as
Yeah,
judges
they become
after
judges.
this.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And it's the thing that I wish libertarians would go stronger on criminal justice reform.
mhm.
It's the most power that states have over us, and they can come to your house and kill you, or they can take you in and say you did this. And if they want to, they can find you guilty. If you think that
Yeah.
our system really works, you need to go to courthouses and watch for a few days, and you'll realize that this system is not what we pay for or fight for or anything else.
Yeah.
And they have so much power.
Especially the federal system. I tell people all the time. I mean, if you're ever indicted on a federal charge, I mean, you're going to be plain. You don't. Doesn't matter if you know you're innocent and you can prove it, or you think you can prove it. You can't. I mean, they're
Right.
they will get you if they want to on something.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But one last question. So making this documentary, this is the first documentary you made. I'm curious, throughout this whole process, and this is sort of like an open-ended question. You can take whatever you want to. What was the most surprising aspect of either just making a documentary or of the case itself or something else? Was there something that, as you look back on it, you're like, wow, I did not expect that to happen?
Well, in the story, the two things. Well, I'll start with the making of a documentary, going to LA, and my assumption that everybody would be as fired up about and want to make this thing and be, but the availability of editors and everything, the fact that there was an innocent guy in prison and I could prove it to him in 10 minutes didn't matter. Everybody's building their careers. People will leave a project in the middle of it if another project that's better for their career comes up. And I was there during the writer's strike, and so you can imagine, I love scabs, and so like so fitting into LA was a bit of a difficult for me, but ex-military, so and the idea that those people are liberal is
Mm-hmm.
is a joke, and so but story wise, Anitra Branyan, I knew she had dated Turner. She had dated Turner, and she testified in Turner's trial. So I had located her. She's in Virginia Beach, and I'm questioning her. And then she starts telling me, well, then, the murder happened on Monday night. Wednesday, Billy comes into town from AP Hill, and we go out to dinner and a movie. And I'm like, what? And she goes, yeah, I started dating Billy after I dated Turner. And so it's like, I didn't know anything about it. Well, oh yeah, Billy was writing me letters telling me that he loved me, and then it was all Turner's fault. And then I started reading the letters and comparing them to the previous letters, and I would catch him in lies.
Mm-hmm.
And then as it went, like the stories don't match up, like this doesn't, and then she basically catches him in lies, and then goes to Turner's mother, and that she was called as a witness, but none of that came up. That should have come up. The Jude Franco, the guy that Brown confessed to in the county jail, offered up to come testify for Turner, but Bridges said, oh, he pushes drugs. He won't help us, but I think he would have helped them. I think that if Brown is telling people all the way back in '96 what happened, that they should have called him.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, from a story thing, there was just like, boy, if just an investigator had done half of what I was doing, Turner wouldn't be in prison.
Yeah. It's really, I mean, it's a sad documentary, but at the same time, it's very necessary. And it's funny that, it kind of reminds me of my show in a way, because a lot of the times I'll bring on people who have been through the criminal justice system, and a lot for nonviolent crimes, for drug crimes, conspiracy crimes, things like that. And they'll be doing 10, 20, 25 years in prison. And often the feedback I get on my show on those interviews is, it was an amazing interview, but I just, felt sad afterwards. I'm like, well, that's really not what I'm going for.
Right.
I'm trying to kind of show the inspiring side of it, the way that this individual, because I mean, honestly, a lot of the time their story is they come out and it's not like a pity party. They're not, feeling that they feel they've been wronged, but they're grateful for the opportunity at a second chance on life. And so I try to highlight that aspect of it as well, but it's tough.
That is, speaking of which, that is another surprise, was going into prisons. As much as I did before I went in the first time, I was expecting it to be, skinheads and Oz and a bunch of big muscle bound dudes. And it's not, it's young kids on drug charges that mm-hmm. The prisons are full of that. It's not at all what we think of. Now, maybe the high level federal prisons are, but that was another big surprise of who is in these prisons.
Yeah, for sure. Well, JD, I'm grateful for the time you gave us today. And if you just want anything else you have to plug or to talk about, you want to share with the audience?
It was great to have you on. It's a great show, and keep up the fight for liberty and fight for freedom. And please watch my film and comment, write reviews on Amazon or iTunes. That helps a lot. The reviews are pretty solid. If people aren't sure about taking an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes, read the reviews.
Yeah, for sure. I will go and do that right after this.
Yeah, that's great, John. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you. Hey guys, long time supporter of the show, Tyler Colford, awesome guy, very talented rapper, musician. He has a new song out, coming out with a music video also. And the song is called First World Problems. It's by Intrinsic and Crypto Man. Crypto Man is Tyler. I've heard it. It's an awesome song. Unfortunately, I wanted to play you guys a little clip from it during this ad here today. Fortunately, got a little snag with getting the audio of that all buttoned up. So not going to have it for you here, but what you can do is you can go to Spotify and just type in First World Problems. It'll pop right up and you can listen to it. So check it out. And next week, I will have a little preview for you. But in the meantime, go listen. First World Problems, Intrinsic and Crypto Man. Hope you all enjoyed that interview on Finding Freedom. Another awesome guest. And hopefully you guys also have subscribed to the Lions of Liberty podcast and you're getting all three of our unique shows in your little listening device delivered to your ears. If you haven't, please do that. Just go to your app, you know how to do it, and subscribe. You can also leave us a 5-star review and a nice comment. We would prefer if you did it on Apple Podcasts, but anywhere you can on the internet, please leave us a positive comment. Also, the 3 shows that we have, Monday's show with Mark Claire, our flagship program, our longest running program, and on Wednesday, Electric Liberty Land with Brian McWilliams. Those guys have been killing it, and I am so excited about the direction of Lions of Liberty. We're seeing some awesome numbers right now, and we're going to continue to grow, so it's great stuff. If you want to support us, we would love that too. Please go to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. You can support us for as little as a couple bucks, or if you get in at a higher level, you get merchandise and access to us, and all the way up to you can advertise on the show or get to even produce a show. So check it all out, patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. And if you haven't checked it out yet, please consider checking out the Lions of Liberty store, where we have some awesome t-shirts. We have a Taxation is Death t-shirt with an awesome design. We have a Wax On, Tax Off t-shirt. And we're always coming up with new ideas and adding new t-shirt designs to the store. Check that out at lionsofliberty.store. And if you're in the Pride, you get a discount on anything you buy in the store. So you do both of those things and you win. That's all I got, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. This is John Odermatt signing off. Always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.